Paris, France, September 4th, 2025. The French capital once again took centre stage in European diplomacy as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and a host of European leaders gathered at the Élysée Palace for critical defence talks. The occasion was framed around the so-called Coalition of the Willing, a group of nearly 30 nations determined to reinforce Ukraine's security amid its grinding war with Russia. The atmosphere was formal, yet charged with a sense of urgency. Arrivals at the palace were carefully staged, each leader welcomed personally by French President Emmanuel Macron on the famous stone steps. Cameras captured the moments, underscoring both symbolism and substance. Europe presenting a united front at a time when the continent's security architecture feels increasingly fragile. The first arrival was the motorcade carrying Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He stepped out with his characteristic solemnity, his trademark military-style jacket standing in contrast to the ceremonial grandeur of the Élysée courtyard. Emmanuel Macron greeted him warmly. The two leaders shook hands firmly before ascending the palace steps together. The imagery was striking. Ukraine's embattled president side by side with France's head of state, both acknowledging the weight of what lay ahead. As Macron later emphasised to his team, this summit is not merely a diplomatic exercise, but a realignment of Europe's defence commitments. We cannot afford hesitation, Macron has said repeatedly in the run-up to these talks, insisting that Europe's credibility is on the line. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen followed shortly after Zelensky's arrival. With a calm but resolute demeanour, she posed with Macron before entering. Her presence highlighted the European Union's institutional commitment to Ukraine's survival, a matter she has described in past remarks as existential for the European project itself. Europe stands with Ukraine for as long as it takes, von der Leyen has said on numerous occasions, a phrase now almost synonymous with Brussels' policy stance. Moments later, European Council President Antonio Costa arrived. Macron extended the same welcome, shaking hands on the palace steps before posing for photographs. Costa's attendance underscored that this was not just a gathering of individual leaders, but a collective European endeavour at the highest levels. Belgium's Prime Minister Bart de Wever then stepped into view. Known for his pragmatic approach, his role in supporting NATO's eastern flank has been noted in Brussels corridors as increasingly pivotal. His handshake with Macron reflected the steady solidarity of smaller EU states, nations that nonetheless carry significant weight in shaping consensus. From the north, Finnish President Alexander Stubb entered the courtyard. Finland's accession to NATO has been one of the most consequential shifts in Europe's defence landscape since Russia's full-scale invasion. Stubb's presence was laden with meaning, a once neutral nation now deeply embedded in collective defence and determined to stand by Ukraine. The arrivals continued in quick succession. Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof was welcomed by Macron, followed by Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen. Both leaders have been vocal in their support for Ukraine, particularly Frederiksen, who earlier this year spearheaded initiatives to deliver F-16 fighter jets to Kyiv. Her leadership has been described as a linchpin in Europe's push to strengthen Ukraine's air defences. Finally, the arrival of Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk drew particular attention. Poland has emerged as one of Ukraine's staunchest allies, consistently pressing Western partners for stronger measures against Moscow. Tusk has been blunt in his language, warning repeatedly that if Ukraine falls, Poland and other frontline states could be next. The defence of Ukraine is the defence of Europe itself, Tusk has said, capturing the mood across much of Eastern Europe. Inside the palace, the agenda was clear. The Coalition of the Willing aims to expand military assistance to Kyiv, explore pathways for long-term defence guarantees, and, most significantly, prepare for the possibility of deploying multinational troops should a ceasefire eventually take hold. Officials stress that such a deployment would only occur in a post-conflict environment, but the fact that it is being openly discussed reflects how far the debate has moved since the early days of the war. For Zelensky, this gathering is more than symbolism. Ukraine's military remains locked in a punishing confrontation, and Western aid, while significant, has often been slow, fragmented, or bogged down in domestic political disputes. By standing alongside European leaders at the Élysée, he sought to drive home the urgency of reliable, coordinated support. Ukraine does not fight only for itself, Zelensky has reminded his counterparts, but for the entire free world. His words, quoted time and again, resonate heavily in capitals from Warsaw to Washington. Macron, too, used the occasion to reiterate France's position. While sometimes criticised for cautiousness, he has increasingly hardened his rhetoric. Earlier this year, he warned, "Europe cannot be a spectator in its own security." That message has since evolved into action, with Paris pushing for more concrete guarantees. The French president has made clear that a strategic vacuum in Ukraine would only embolden Russia and destabilise the continent further. Von der Leyen's participation added institutional weight. The European Commission continues to spearhead sanctions packages against Moscow and channel financial aid to Kyiv. "We will not allow Russia to redraw borders by force," she has declared, words that align with the broader message of this Paris summit. As the leaders gathered behind closed doors, the optics remained powerful. The Élysée courtyard, lined with cameras and security, projected the image of a continent standing in solidarity. Each handshake, each step up the palace stairs carried the weight of history and the shadow of war. For now, the coalition of the willing is about signalling resolve. The practicalities, troop deployments, weapons transfers, funding will be hammered out in weeks and months ahead. But today's meeting at the Élysée Palace set a tone. Europe is moving toward a more assertive role in Ukraine's defence, no longer waiting for Washington alone to set the pace. As the evening settled over Paris, one reality was clear. The war has redefined Europe's security map, and its leaders, shoulder to shoulder with Zelensky, know that hesitation is no longer an option.
Président. Good.